First up on your Fast Track to 7, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison is out with a revised legal opinion on that new and controversial state law that limits physical restraints on students. The clarification comes after nearly 40 Minnesota law enforcement agencies pulled their school resource officers from districts across the state. Some argue the new law is vague and can be interpreted to mean that it's unlawful to apply any sort of restraint tactic on a disruptive student. But in the new legal opinion, the Attorney General says the new law does not limit the type of reasonable force that officers can use to carry out their lawful duties, meaning that school resource officers are still allowed to use restraints and reasonable force when making an arrest. Ellison says law enforcement leaders have raised other questions as well, and there may be room for additional clarification from the Minnesota legislature. New this morning, the executive director of the North Dakota Republican Party is resigning, citing an inability to carry out the duties that she was hired to do. Samantha Hawley submitted her resignation on Tuesday, saying that she had recently encountered several obstacles that made it difficult for her to continue at the job. Hawley says operations were being taken a completely different direction than what was clearly communicated with her many times, and that she was intentionally being set up to take the fall for the North Dakota GOP flaws. She says that made it hard to function day to day. Hawley had been with the party since January of 2020 and served as the executive director since January of this past year.
Recovery mentally is a tough road, but physically it's coming along.
We are getting an idea today of what life has been like the past few months for Carly Koswick, the civilian who was shot during that July 14th ambush attack on Fargo police. Koswick was presented with a check yesterday from organizers of the Back the Blue fundraiser. Valley News Team's Zoe Jones spoke with her about the recovery process and the impact the community has made.
I'm just really glad to be back in Fargo and starting my life here.
25-year-old Carly Koswick had just moved to Fargo from New England when she was shot as a gunman targeted police on July 14th. Her hip bone was shattered and she's had 2 surgeries. But despite all of that, she decided to move back, and the community was ready to welcome her. On Wednesday afternoon, Koswick received $10,000 raised by local business owners to help with her medical bills.
It's definitely going to help, especially I haven't been able to work being in the wheelchair.
Although the recovery process has been a challenge so far,
recovery mentally is a tough road, but physically it's coming along.
Koswick's spirits remain high, which she says is partially because of the support she's received from the community.
It's incredible and just shows how supportive Fargo as a community is. I think that's the whole reason that I felt comfortable coming to the police station to accept the check today, just because I knew that people were being so supportive, and I really wanted to express my gratitude for it.
Along with the $10,000 presented to Carly, $30,000 was presented from the Leadership Care Fund, which the business owners say they're happy to provide.
It feels awesome. I just met Carly here about 10 minutes ago, and seeing her condition she's in still and her process she's going through recovering, it's going to help her out a lot. So we're very happy to give that to her.
And Carly's message to the public?
I just want to say thank you, and thank you for supporting everyone who's been involved in the incident, and I'm really grateful that it wasn't worse than it was, and I'm getting through it, and I'm getting through it with a lot of help.
In Fargo, Zoe Jones, Valley News Live.
Organizers of Back the Blue Night are still selling shirts, with all the proceeds going to the Leadership Care Fund. We have a link to that on this story on your free VNL News app. This morning, waking up, you might be hearing a rumble of thunder, maybe even seeing some lightning. Meteorologist Tiffany Savona tracking the very latest on our radar. Good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning, Jordan. Mother Nature may have been your alarm clock this morning, all thanks to the storms that rolled in overnight. And we're still tracking some of that activity that may be impacting your morning commute. So Bemidji, you just have some light right now. Thunderstorms now are north and east of you, but we still have some steady rain, and gets a little bit more heavy as you go north of the Clearbrook area and east of Thief River Falls. Thunderstorms developing right over the Crookston area into Minnesota and into Fargo. We are dry, but the thunderstorms continue for areas like Page and Cooperstown, Wimbledon. The rain will be out of here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Devil's Lake, some heavier rain pushing into your region. Grand Forks, we do have some spotty showers, but that shouldn't slow you down too much. And the showers extend up toward Grafton, and you can expect all this activity continue to push north and east into northern Minnesota and northern North Dakota. Look at these numbers. It is very mild for this time of year. Our average low is in the 40s, and we're talking about temperatures in the mid-60s in Fargo, 66, 64 Fergus Falls. It's 61 in Valley City, 58 in Jamestown, 58 degrees in Devil's Lake. So it has been a warm week, and today we're looking at another warm day. Not quite as warm as yesterday, but highs around 80 degrees in Fargo, lower 80s south and east of Fargo. Keep in mind that there's going to be a cold front draped across the region. That's why we have such a large temperature difference. Look up toward Devil's Lake and Langdon. Highs only in the lower 60s there. So our storm chances will continue as we head into Friday, and then we have greater rain chances in the forecast as we head into the weekend, which will mark the first day of fall on Saturday. At least it will start to feel more like fall as we head into the weekend, Jordan. That's good news.
We like the good news. Thank you, Tiffany. New this morning, writers and producers say they are nearing an agreement to end the Writers Guild of America strike after meeting face-to-face yesterday, and the two sides hope to finalize that deal today. The union's been on strike for more than 100 days, with actors at times joining the picket line in July. They have argued that the compensation does not match the revenue that's been generated during this streaming era. Fundraisers are planned tomorrow for the Hatton Northwood volleyball team. They were involved in a bus crash last week. It happened as the team was on its way to a match in Petersburg, North Dakota. All 27 people that were in the school bus at the time of the crash are doing okay. However, the person in the pickup involved in the crash died. Hatton and Northwood are holding a tailgate supper from 5:30 to 6:45 tomorrow night at Tyler Field in Northwood. That's before the 7 o'clock football game against Maple River. Free will donations will be accepted for the volleyball team. The money will go toward items that were lost in the crash, like uniforms and gear. The pressure is on to track down a Minnesota murder suspect who was accidentally released from jail. 29-year-old Kevin Mason is accused of killing someone outside of a Minneapolis funeral 2 years ago. He was arrested for that last Wednesday in Indianapolis. However, the next day, the sheriff's department there says a records clerk mistakenly removed 2 of the holds on Mason, one for murder and the other for a parole violation. That means Mason was able to walk right out of the jail, no questions asked. The suspect in a deadly West Fargo car crash last spring now back in jail on manslaughter and negligent homicide charges. Police picked up 28-year-old Takoya Saldana yesterday on a warrant. The North Dakota Highway Patrol says Saldana was driving on Main Avenue last April when she hit and killed 31-year-old Thomas Fredette. Original charges against Saldana were dropped and then upgraded to reflect the victim's death. Moorhead PD is now identifying the man whose body was pulled from the Red River over the weekend. He's 32-year-old Garrett Bird of Fargo. Medical examiners say they didn't find evidence of significant trauma. A toxicology report is now underway. Law enforcement is not confirming if Bird was the man who ran away from Fargo police officers earlier this month and then evaded them by jumping into the river. Moorhead police don't have anything new to say about the death of NDSU student Tom Bierson, whose body was found in a Moorhead RV business lot 9 years ago this week. He went missing from North Fargo on September 20th, 2014. He was found murdered 3 days later in South Moorhead.
What we're able to say at this time to our community is that this is still very much an active investigation. It hasn't went to a cold case status, which means that we continue to write search warrants, conduct interviews. We have basically had all of our investigators work on this case.
Contact Moorhead Police if you have any information on the Tom Bierson murder. The 2024 Olympic crowds will admire a new spire towering over that iconic Notre Dame in Paris. The cathedral's new reconstruction chief says he wanted the scaffolding around that spire taken down before the Olympic Games. They kick off in the French capital next summer. Workers are also installing some cutting-edge fire protection system in all parts of that 12th century edifice. No more mandatory suits in the U.S. Senate anyway. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer notified senators on Friday that they would no longer be required to wear business attire on the Senate floor. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania was one of the first to embrace that new rule. Yesterday, he was spotted wearing short sleeves, shorts, and sneakers. Some Republicans, though, ridiculing the loosened rules, arguing that senators need to be held to certain standards. When three friends tried to check into a hotel in Tennessee for a concert trip the other day, they couldn't find anyone who worked there. So they say they just took matters into their own hands. They got behind the desk and started helping hotel guests. They say they even served some breakfast. At times, they say they struggled to keep the buffet stocked, but overall, the three friends say they enjoyed stepping in. Now, eventually, a manager did show up and was able to get them checked into their room. A spokesperson for the hotel says their overnight shift employee left without telling anyone. Now, that person has since been fired from their gig, but apparently these folks have a new career opportunity if they feel so. The Today Show and CBS Mornings are just about to start, but the Valley Today rolls on. More news and weather coming up on the CW. Otherwise, have a great Thursday, everybody.